green in the Heart of Texas line. A stolen line is still a good one, but I'm going to give credit where credit is due. Dirty Mo came up with that. But green in the Heart of Texas, ladies, that's what we saw. No natural cautions on our first road course of the season. First time on a road course race with no natural caution since 2022. Do you guys expect it to go down that way?
Absolutely not.
I certainly didn't, but it made me thankful for the fact that we put the stage brakes back in this year. I mean,
Amen.
who knows what would have happened, if we didn't have the stage brakes, if we would have potentially eventually saw a natural caution. But yeah, I was certainly happy for those 2 short breaks in what was otherwise a very green race.
I don't really like to compare trucks in Xfinity up against Cup for a preview of what we might to see because the talent level is so different. The cars are different. The stage lengths are very different. The ultimate race length is very different. So strategy is very different than what you'd see in a Cup race. But what do you make of the fact, Lee? Are these guys just too good that once you give them 3, now 4 stabs at a certain course, I'm not going to say they perfected it. We saw solo spins and we saw some guys take each other out. But with a course that's almost 4 miles long, NASCAR's not going to throw a full course caution for something that 99% of the field is not going to get interfered with.
Well, and there are a lot of guys getting into the back of a lot of other guys, and including the winner, William Byron. I mean, he had an incident, and Rudy told him, just calm down and mind your marks. And it's amazing how laser focused he was. But they had, as you said, partial, in the course cautions. It wasn't full course cautions, and they just ran and did their thing. You're absolutely right, Alexa, when you talk about going to a situation where they put the stage brakes back in, because without it, who knows what the complexion of this race might have looked like. But I was kind of surprised last week. Somebody was asking, do we need to come back to COTA? And I'm thinking, why the hell not? It's an incredible course. I was lucky enough to drive it in a production McLaren. So I really get going up the hill into turn 1 and how crazy that is. But I think that having a true road course on the schedule like that, and I'm not saying that Watkins Glen and Sonoma isn't. It's just adding something of that magnitude and something that has really built a reputation in a short amount of time is really good for the sport.
Yeah, I mean, I think the technicality that COTA offers, and we'll talk more about drivers, cutting that and what that, the consequences for that were a little bit later. But having a course like that is, FIA approved, that Formula One races on, I mean, it puts us, on a platform that other racetracks just don't internationally. I can certainly see where people would say, oh, well, I want to watch NASCAR on that racetrack because I like that racetrack, not necessarily because of the series that's running, but because something's running on, the Circuit of the Americas. So, yeah, I think it needs to say on the schedule, too. I think not only, does it put us in a certain area internationally, but it's a world-class facility. It's probably the nicest facility that we go to because of what it needs to be, up to par for Formula One and FIA standards.
Yeah, it's the only track where Formula One and NASCAR both compete on. So I think there is prestige. I think it is a premier racetrack around the country. Did it offer enough from a fan standpoint in terms of excitement and edge of your seat drama and passes for the lead and who might take this? I would argue that even without any natural cautions, Lee, we really did get to see cars fighting for this. I mean, I think there were 3 that were elite in William Byron, Christopher Bell. I don't know, maybe you toss it up there. I mean, Ty Gibbs, arguably the 3rd best car, but you had Ross Chastain, you had Alex Bowman, you had Tyler Reddick in there. There were a handful, a half a dozen cars that kept you guessing until the very end.
Well, I think Ty Gibbs is a student of the sport, and Ty Gibbs has also spent a lot of time in the simulator, where William Byron, that's kind of his bread and butter. That was how he came up, not in the traditional sense where you throw a kid in a go-kart at 5-6 years old and say, boys have at it. So Ty, he's a student of the sport. He loves F1. He's done a lot of that kind of studied that milieu of racing. And so I think that it makes him better suited on a road course. Not that he's not going to win everywhere. This kid is just on the precipice of kicking down the door. We're all feeling it, right? And he'll get there. And, think about this, Danielle, too. If Bowman isn't saving fuel, because remember, he was the first one to pit out of that group in that final stage. If he's not being in fuel conserve mode, I think he's right up there with them.
Just speaking to your point about Ty and sim racing and putting a big emphasis on road courses, I think you're going to see that a lot more from the young drivers, because pound for pound, there's more road courses on the schedule now than there ever has been before. And so these young drivers are seeing, why they need to be good on those tracks. Before it was like, okay, well, we ran there a couple times a year. We can maybe have those be throwaway races. You can't throw away road courses anymore. No. You just can't do that. And so the young guys, Ty Gibbs and William Byron, all of those guys are saying, okay, well, how are we going to get better? We're going to have sim time. We're going to put a concerted effort into being better on road courses. You heard William thank Max Pappas. He specifically went to Max and had Max help him, coach him. And clearly it's paying dividends, because he winds up in victory lane.
Pretty impressive to see it. William Byron wins from the pole. Christopher Bell comes home second. Got it to about 1 second there on the white flag lap and just could not get any closer to William Byron. Ty Gibbs has to settle for third. Alex Bowman, who you mentioned, finishing fourth. Tyler Reddick rounding out your top five. A.J. Allmendinger made a push through the field, but sixth is where he ended his day. Ross Chastain, man, with a slow pit stop on the money stop. 23 to go. A 3 second slower stop than William Byron. That was the difference. So he has to settle for seventh. Chris Buescher was eighth. Kyle Busch ninth. And Martin Truex Jr. 10th. Ross Chastain, he made a bid for it, and he won the inaugural race at COTA a handful of years ago. Did you cringe a little bit for Trackhouse Racing watching that 13-second stop when it counted?
Well, not just him, but also Bell had a slow stop, too, and you have to wonder if Bell gets, even 5 of those seconds back, how racy that last lap might have been, or the closing laps. But you kind of felt for Ross, doing what he did. But this is a situation, these guys are getting ready. You have to be playoff minded from the get-go. That was his moment. I don't know if he was the cause or if it was pit crew related, but he's been so hard on himself. I mean, just beat himself up day in and day out. Got into somebody, was it the Xfinity or the truck race, and he was hard on himself again. And it's just, he's just really rough on himself. But on the other side of that spectrum, then you have a Chris Buescher who came from all the way from the back of the field, unapproved adjustments, gets another top 10. And you're just watching these guys and you're saying, yeah, it's early in the year. We're only 6 races in. Every point counts, as Adam Stevens beat in the head of Christopher Bell when he stayed out and didn't pit after that first stage. And people are like, okay, are they going to try to do a 2-stop race? What are we watching here? But we're seeing even this early on how important the points are and will continue to be.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You talk about the complexion of that race and specifically that Ross Chastain pit stop and how painful that was. When you have a race that is green like that and is trending green, every mistake on pit road is compounded 10 times more than if you're like, okay, well, we had that slow stop, but the field's probably going to get bunched up because we're going to get a yellow. That just didn't happen yesterday. So those mistakes, unfortunately, cost, big money, if you will, at the pay window, because if you don't get the field bunched back up, it's hard to get that track position back.